Hi everyone, it's Suze from esbconnect. I'm the founder and the CEO over here, and we are introducing our new video series where we're going to be talking about anything to do with the industry, latest email news, email as an ID, cool campaigns we've seen that we think is creative, and what's going to impact the industry over the next year to 2 years.
Hi, I'm Axel. I'm brand growth manager here at ESB Connect, and I will be getting involved in the conversation. So, I guess a good place to start, Suze, would be about the funnel and how traditionally it's been linear. So, it'd be great to just get your thoughts on where you think it is now and how it's changed.
Oh yeah, I mean it's all over the LinkedIn at the moment with everyone discussing about things like attribution, and I think that's because typically you used to have this downward funnel where you had your brand awareness at the top, you had your consideration in the middle, and then you had your purchase towards the bottom, and there were very set channels for each of them. So obviously you had like things like outer home, mid top funnel, things like Facebook mid funnel, and then more bottom of the funnel tactics like PPC. But now I think everyone knows that it's taken a lot more to nurture someone through that funnel, and people are bouncing between the different layers. So they might come into that consideration period, but then go back up to brand awareness, and then might come down to think about, yeah, I'm definitely going to purchase. And then you see them back up into the consideration. So it's kind of this like bouncing ball effect up and down the funnel rather than like a journey that goes all the way from the top to the bottom. And I think that causes challenges, not only for like how do you speak to the audience, but actually more so for like how do you map that journey and then reward and select channels accordingly.
I agree with you there. And I guess the thing that I think about most is it's a lot more complex now, as you just said. So how would you advise brands to deal with that?
I think the first bit is stop thinking about it as a journey and instead start thinking about what are the personas that I'm trying to attract and what problems are they likely to have. I still think there's always a place for bottom of the funnel tactics, like when you know they're at that last mile, like trying to nudge them over, like they're showing really high purchase intent, they're on your site, that may be adding things to the basket. Then yeah, there are bottom of the funnel tactics that will work to get them over. But I think on the rest of the funnel, it's actually more about not having these say above the line assets and below the line assets, but more about like what is the problem that that brand is facing at that that consumer is facing at that moment in time. So are they like a position like me? Are they like a mum who is time short running a business, and therefore anything that speeds up delivery or doing a job that is kind of tedious is going to be pertinent, and then use that as kind of both the brand awareness and the kind of consideration piece. So it's almost, what I'm saying there is that it's less about like different creators for different moments and more about thinking about how can I relate to that person and story tell and create like something that is contextual to their needs, that stays with them, rather than a disjointed like we're showing this high impact unit up here, here's a lead gen form here, and then here's a voucher code here. If that kind of makes sense to some extent.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And actually, it makes me think about lifetime value a lot because speaking to a lot of clients, we're finding that, people are converting and then they're disappearing, they're lapsing. And I think that has a lot to do with what you were saying, like, creating a brand image and not just resonating for one moment. Because if you're hitting the person right at the bottom, then yeah, they might purchase, but what are they doing when they stop?
The lifetime value point is interesting for a couple of things, because I think probably why a lot of people are seeing lifetime value erode is one, that the space is more competitive. Two, there's less brand loyalty. But I actually think brand loyalty has switched from being loyal to necessarily a brand, but often loyal to influencers and people they follow. So where brands are, and I think rightly, I'm not saying wrongly, that leaning into a lot of influencer content, etc., etc., they're actually getting someone who's loyal to purchasing whatever that influencer recommends, and then they're going on to the next brand when they recommend the next brand, etc. So I think there's a few things there, like if they are sticking with one influencer, make sure that story sticks with them. You know, it works across like a number of months and even year plus. But also then the after point journey of like, even when they come your customer, they're still in that funnel. They can leave the next day. And so it's like, again, like having that storytelling, like, why would you stick with us? Why are we a good brand? Like, I think it's also this whole idea before was that you went acquisition, oh, retention, and you would always be there. Whereas I think acquisition and retention are pretty much the same thing now in a way.
Yeah, spot on. And I won't let you dodge that comment about influencer marketing, because when I think about it, I think you're 100% right. Like, people become loyal to the influencer, but then is it right or wrong? Because can a brand keep an influencer indefinitely? And then all of a sudden the brand is, like was it the Halifax advert? So we all knew Halifax just because of the
Oh
advert
yeah.
and that one particular person, and then he ended up getting paid a lot of money. So then all of a sudden these brands are being held at ransom because they know, these guys are buying our products because of this influencer. So like, where do they go?
Oh, I mean, that is a whole conversation in itself, really. Because I think on two sides, I do think there's some brand partnerships with influencers where you like authentically know that they just love that brand, they use it every day. Like, and then there's the partnerships where you're like, I wonder how much they got paid for that. Like, the whole thing when like David Beckham did the Sharpie one, and everyone was like, come on, David Beckham, you're not using a Sharpie, are you? Like, we all know that. Like, it doesn't feel authentic. But then you take someone like, I don't know, like say Binky from Made in Chelsea is doing the M&S partnership at the moment, and you actually see how it goes into so many elements of her life, and like actually she probably does shop at M&S for her food, and then her kids' clothing, and then her clothing. Like, it actually feels quite authentic, so they can keep her for a long time.
Do you think George Clooney drinks? I always forget how to say the brand, Nespresso.
Nespresso.
Yeah,
Like,
because he's been doing that for a couple of decades now.
yeah, I actually think he probably does. Like, weirdly, I kind of feel like Nespresso is that like easy, like, I mean, maybe I'm just so disjointed from being like a multi-millionaire, like that I would think they would have an espresso machine, but it feels like something that a multi-millionaire would have in their house, even though it's not that expensive, relatively. But yeah, I do think there is like, and this is something I've said a lot to brands, and it leads on to like a good point for like how you can bring some of your social content into email. Um, People are driving influencer content to LTK basically for their shops. And I always think that's an interesting move for brands to allow that to happen at some level. Because I think the platform's amazing. Don't get me wrong. I go on there and I'm like, oh, okay, this is so easy to shop looks and Instagram posts. Um, but you're basically creating another walled garden. You're driving people to another place where they're going to see content from other influencers, other shops, etc., rather than your own place. And I know it's like, if a brand is doing a brand partnership with an influencer, why don't they create that kind of lookbook within their own site? So, they're driving like, these are my top picks. Then you go to that space on whatever brand. So let's keep with the Marks and Spencers. Here's Binky's like favourites. Come to the page on Marks and Spencers and shop that look. And that's what brings me on to the email side, is that you're obviously pushing that content out to the influencers' followers, um, and they own that audience. You don't own that audience, but the content that they produce, you can put into your emails. So it could be like Binky's style guide, like a weekly style guide from Binky where she picks out her like favorite outfits, or like her recipe things of like, or her quick meals for the kids from like the food range. And that can all go into your email content. And I think that's where brands are starting to miss a trick with email, because email's so like pushy, like transactional emails, 50% off, 10% off. But they can actually have such rich content, and they can leverage all their social content in there, and then actually own that audience reading it, rather than being at the will of like Meta and their algorithms.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. And talking about the power of emails, I get a lot of offers through, as everyone does, and as you say, 10% off, 20% off, and sort of that's the headline. And then you open the email, and I look at the creative, and I'm kind of like, all I really see is the offer, but like, why do I want the offer? What product am I actually buying? Um, so let's talk about creatives.
What is the best and worst creative you've seen and why?
I don't want to talk about the worst because I don't want to like name and shame, and we want to be positive. But one of the best creatives, I think, and I probably received it a couple of years ago now, and I still remember it. It was Filling Pieces. So there's a shoe brand, clothing brand called Filling Pieces, and one thing that I used to hate when you see an email, you couldn't like click. You had to go onto the website, and then you're like, this product that I've seen I can't like how do I even get there or it's no longer there. But with this creative, it was the first time I found out that filling pieces don't just do shoes, they do other things as well. So I don't know if they segmented me or what, but basically that creative was good for everyone because I could look at shoes if I wanted, jackets if I wanted, clothes, socks, male and female stuff. And if I saw something that I liked, which was obviously a product they pushed, I could click on it and it took me to their website on that exact page. And I feel like a lot of brands, you see something, it's in the header or just in the general thing, and you're like, oh, that's really nice. What's it called? Or like, how do I get it? And then you don't get it, and maybe they lose a lot of business because of that. And then you get frustrated, and you're like, I don't want to go back to that site again.
You might not want to name and shame, and I'm not going to name and shame, but I do think you've landed on quite a good creative sin in the sense of I think one of the things is either items out of stock, but when people have lots of like products in one big image, and then as a user, you're trying to click on the product that you're interested in, and it takes you through to like a generic page, like homepage or bestsellers, and you're like, no, but I want this specific product. And then because they haven't necessarily labeled that product, you then have to spend ages trying to find it, and I like you're literally making things hard. So if you are going to do a nice like multi product image, just make sure like there are at least names on it, or you're splitting up the creative so that the different elements are clickable. I think that's definitely important. But if I was going to say like my other top creative sins is a full image. I just still to this day and age, I get like there's a design team out there who are like, we want to use our beautiful fonts and they're not email friendly, and like we've designed it in like a PDF and now we're just going to put it into an email and we're splitting it into 3 images. But if someone has their images off, like I do, or most Outlook users do, it will come across as a big white box with nothing in it, and you're relying on the consumer being like, "Oh, I will click and download images," which in most cases they won't. So I think that's like the number one cardinal sin, because no matter how great your creative is, no one's going to see it if you don't have an image to text ratio.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That leads me on to a question I have for you. What is the biggest change you've seen that we've suggested as a company, SB Connect, when we've changed a creative? So I'm talking performance here.
Oh, so I'm going to do two here, like the backwards looking one and what I think will be our biggest one going forward. So, backwards looking is that above the fold real estate. So, thinking about when someone receives an email, it's the part that is visible on their screen before they have to scroll. And that's like the most pertinent real estate. And often people are just put in like an image with nothing on it, and the image is not necessarily even related to their product. It's just like something nice. Um, that bit you need like a clear, what is the clear USP of this email and what do you want them to do. And second, buttons. People don't know that images are always clickable. You need like buttons and call to actions for them to get up. You basically want them to touch the creative and move on. It's like skimming a stone, like on it, off it, to the website. um Going forward, I actually think our number one recommendation is going to be around what does the text summarize to be, because as more and more systems and email systems and people get software to read their emails, they're going to get summaries. And also there's changes already where like your inbox will show you summaries of what the email is. So you need to make sure whatever that AI is servicing is the key points of that email. So it'd be really like basically looking at what the content is in the email and being like, does that hit home? If someone got a summary of this email in like 2 to 3 lines, would they take the action I want them to take, and would they understand the value? So I actually think copy is going to become one of the most important things going forward in our recommendations.